Hello, everyone. Good morning here on the West Coast. It's 10 a.m. and it's 1 p.m. Eastern. Just wanted to welcome you all to the RDLA February legislative meeting. Happy New Year. We didn't host a webinar in January. Instead, we decided to collapse our January and February webinars into a single meeting and give an overview of the work that RDLA is doing. We have a full agenda today. I'll be giving an introduction to RDLA. My name is Vignesh Ganapathy. I'm here with the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. After me, Paul Melmeyer with NORD will be speaking regarding NORD's 2017 initiatives. Then Stephen Grossman with the HPS group will be discussing the FDA and the new administration. After that, Leslie Rogers will speak regarding the Community First Choice 1915K plan waiver in Oregon. Rachel Radomski with Vertex will speak regarding the Expert Act. Then Max Braunstein, my colleague here, will be giving an update on the Open Act and goings on around Capitol Hill. And finally, my colleague Stephanie Fisher will give an update on Rare Disease Week. So we'll try and get through this with as much time as with as little time as possible, but we definitely have a lot going on. So to give you a little bit of background on RDLA, for those of you who are new to the foundation, to this organization and the work that we do, the RDLA is a program of the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. The Every Life Foundation is a patient advocacy organization that works to advance rare disease treatments through science-driven public policy. RDLA as a program is designed to be a clearinghouse and advocacy center for all rare disease legislation, and I'll get to what that means. What we do is we provide resources and tools for individuals and organizations to be able to advocate on rare disease issues. All of our events and resources are free and open to the entire rare disease community, and we try and signal boost the efforts of other members in the rare disease community. Our RDLA does not sign on to support or oppose legislation or policy. This is just an opportunity for patient organizations to be able to get their voice heard. RDLA also does not take a lead on legislation. It can only assist with an initiative if a patient organization or patient advocate has requested the support. And later on in this presentation, I'll explain how you can request that support from us. And again, we do not speak for rare disease patients. It's our goal to amplify your voices and the voices of your loved ones. Some of the resources that we have a DC office where we do often host our RDLA in-person meetings. We'll show you our calendar a little later on in the presentation, and we'll let you know when those in-person meetings will be. We offer consulting services on legislative and grassroots strategies, so if you're a patient organization and you have questions about how to get your initiative out the gate, we can help with that. And of course, we can assist with coalition building and support for that legislation as well, who you'd want to reach out to, other organizations, what you're looking for in finding an author, a sponsor, and so on. We also issue rare disease congressional scorecards. This is a way that we're able to track how legislators are voting on rare disease issues and whether they are members of the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus. We also have a free online advocacy center to contact members of Congress. For that, you can reach out to me and I'll help set anything up. Our website, Clearinghouse for Rare Disease Legislation, Policy, Reports, and Advocacy Tools is available at rareadvocates.org. We also prepare a monthly e-blast with the latest news, action alerts, policy events. It's a good way to keep abreast of what's going on in the rare disease policy world. And finally, we have a public policy calendar that's available at rareadvocates.org. This is populated by the events and happenings that you all let us know about. So we urge patient advocates and organizations to reach out to us with your events. Usually we're trying to look through listings and emails that we receive and, again, provide a signal boost for you all. And finally, as I mentioned, submit your policy events, news, action alerts, and we will share them with the advocacy community. So again, visit rareadvocates.org and you can get started with that. Some of our programs that we have our monthly webinars to discuss pending legislation. That's what you're on right now, and it's open to all rare organizations. This is an opportunity to get the word out there on initiatives that you're working on or on something that people should be aware of, to try and get feedback. We also coordinate the bipartisan, bicameral Rare Disease Congressional Caucus, and the caucus hosts 4 Congressional Caucus briefings over the course of the year, and it's an opportunity to educate members of Congress on issues that are important to the rare disease community. We host Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. Stephanie is going to discuss that a little later on in the webinar, but this is our yearly lobby day, legislative conference. We host a caucus briefing. It's a week-long opportunity to go to D.C., meet with your legislators, talk to them, and really advocate on our issues and get the word out there. We also host in-district lobby days. That's going to be changing a little bit this year, but we'll let you know about that when the time comes. It's our opportunity to train advocates on how they can pressure their members in their home district, so you don't have to fly to DC, and you can do it right where you are located. And finally, we host Rare Voice Awards, which is our annual awards event, and where we honor individuals who have taken a lead on rare disease legislation or advocacy, and really commend legislators, legislative staff, patient advocates on all of your fantastic work. So for these webinars, we have a number of them scheduled already, and we urge you to mark your calendars now. March 15th is going to be the next one. Then in April, May, and June, we'll be hosting not only an online webinar, but we'll have an in-person meeting in DC at our offices there. So for that, look forward to an invitation that includes the address. If you're located in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and you can make it, we would love to see you there. You know, sometimes putting names to faces is the best way to drive things forward, and you know, it helps to be able to kind of talk these issues out. So we definitely urge you, if you're around, to try and make those. We will also be holding webinars July, August, September, October, and we'll let you know when we schedule November and December as well. Again, the agendas are always open, so you can submit your item to me, and I'll help you get set up. You can send your slides over and present on issues that are important to you. So to give you a little bit of background on the Rdla Advocacy Center, when you visit the Rdla website, we have a Take Action page, and this is your one-stop shop for rare disease policy advocacy. That shows what the current action alerts are. These are issues that are important to rare disease patients, or bills that could impact the rare disease community and that other advocates are working on. And when you go to that site, you'll be able to find how to act. So we make it easy. All you have to do is, here's an example of our ask for legislators to join the Rare Disease Caucus. You just enter your zip or postal code, and you will automatically get a draft letter that you can then send on to your members of Congress. You know, you can edit these letters so you can tell your own stories, what's important to you, and why you know, members of Congress should listen. Our Advocacy Center will help do the rest. We can match advocates to your state and federal legislators, and we'll send those letters to those legislators to support your effort. Any patient organization can submit an action alert, and we'll provide you results. So we can give you updates on how many people have taken action and how effective that was. We also have sign-on pages. This is an example of one on the EveryLife site. We don't currently have one active on the Rdla site, but this is your way to spread the word to other organizations and amplify your voice. If you are trying to support a piece of rare disease legislation, and you visit and you want to be able to have other organizations sign on, all you have to do is send your letter to us. We'll put it on the Rdla site, and we'll we'll amplify that voice. Other organizations can go and sign on, and then they'll be listed in your letter when you deliver them to your members of Congress. Our public policy calendar right now, we're still filling it out, but for any event that you may be hosting or you may be attending that you want to spread the word about, this is your opportunity to do so. You can submit your event to my email address, and I'll make sure to add it to the public policy calendar. As you can see there, you know, there's a Policy Summit 2 days from now. There's a Research America hosting an event on the 14th. And then Rare Disease Week is at the end of the month, and there's a number of events that have been scheduled for that. So you can find the registration links on there and any other information. This is how RDLA is able to help you build a grassroots rare disease movement. You know, our programs and events serve to educate and empower new patient advocates. We encourage patient organizations to communicate and cooperate with each other. That's what these phone calls are for. We also look at this as an opportunity to educate Congress about the needs of the rare disease community through research, drug development, and access to treatments. And we look to build those solid relationships with members of Congress and their staff. You know, by using our Advocacy Center as well as taking part in Rare Disease Day and in your in-district meetings, it's a way to from the get-go, develop those relationships over the course of a year, especially as you're shepherding legislation or you're following legislation or supporting it. You can make sure that you have as many touch points as possible with your members of Congress as well as with other members of the rare disease community. So as I mentioned, you bring the issue, we'll bring the reach. Last year in our final push on the 21st Century Cures Act, there were 2,855 calls made through our network. You know, this is, we urge you to definitely feel free to use us. We have, you know, we have a number of, we have a large list and a number of other patient organizations that are waiting to help you or that need your help. Nancy Goodman with Kids v. Cancer, you know, had a great quote to recognize our efforts that our advocacy tools helped Kids v. Cancer send more than 4,000 emails to Congress to help pass the Creating Hope Act, and we hope to be able to do that for you as well. And advocacy works. Here are a number of pictures of Max Schill, who was Little Max. He was one of the premier advocates on the 21st Century Cures Act, and as you can see, these are relationships that he built over a long period of time. You know, you can see him on TV on Channel 3, and later on with wearing a little crown with Congress members to get in Upton, and you know, these are touch points that you want to have, and we try and help you do that by both getting you meetings as well as giving you the advocacy tools that you need to reach out to your members. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Paul Melmeyer with, actually real quick, I should say, if any of you have any questions, I will unmute the lines right now, and then after that we can open it up to Paul. So give me just a moment while I unmute the lines.
And you can also, if you have a question, you can write in using the chat function as well.
Big Niche, this is Steve Grossman. Are you going to be able to accommodate me not on phone but not WebEx?
Sure, yes, I can do that. That's no problem.
Okay, good. That will help me. Thank you.
No worries.
Just a quick question. I'm unable, the link that was sent in the meeting request is not working for me. It says link no longer available. Am I the only one having that problem?
Anyone else having that problem?
I had that problem, and then I switched.
I had to download a new program and then run that, but it was with the original link.
You might try switching the browser. I had to switch to Internet Explorer, and then it worked.
Okay, thank you.
Let us know if you still have issues with it. And
it's webinar, whatever it is, on the phone.
Anyone else have any questions regarding RDLA services?
Vignesh, this is Tracy Van Houten, when will the list of the members of the Congressional Caucus be updated post-election?
Hey, Tracy, this is Max. So technically at the start of a new Congress, we kind of have the reset button. We definitely, the list up there is from the last Congress, and what will happen is during Rare Disease Week, when all of the patients are in town, they're going to fan out and ask their members to rejoin the caucus, or if they've never been to join again. So the list there is really from the last Congress. I think it's very likely that those members will remain part of the caucus unless they did not return to Congress because of election stuff. So we'll probably have the most up-to-date list after Rare Disease Week, but you'll still use the list that's up there right now as kind of a guide if you want to know and not remember. Okay, any other RDLA questions before we move on?
What is the public policy website or email that I
Here, I will
post our events?
Sure. It's you send it over to me. It's a Bicameral. That's GANAPHY at every life.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of background and I didn't hear any of that. I'm sorry. VGANA.
P as in Peter, ATHY at everylifefoundation.org.
PT.
PATHY. It's on the screen currently.
Oh. PATHY at every. Oh, thank you.
Definitely, no problem.
I don't have the screen, so I'm sorry I can't see it.
Oh, no, I apologize for that. It's also on the website at rareadvocates.org. So when you arrive on the policy calendar page, you should be able to find my contact information.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pete.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Great, thank you. And with that, I will pass it over to Paul with NORD, who will give an update on initiatives.
Hey everybody, this is Paul over at NORD. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on what we're working on in regards to the Affordable Care Act repeal and replace attempts that are happening up on the Capitol Hill as we speak. So I won't be getting into any of our other 2017 policy priorities. There are plenty of them. Obviously the UFA reauthorizations, a lot of other FDA policy, NIH policy, and so forth, but for the short amount of time I have here today, I just wanted to focus on our ACA efforts. So just as a quick background on the importance of the Affordable Care Act to the rare disease patient community, there are plenty of provisions that are very, very important for rare disease patients, but there were three key patient protections included within the Affordable Care Act that we believe we need to be most active in trying to defend and most active in ensuring some kind of protection remains for individuals with rare diseases. So the first is prohibition on discrimination against individuals with pre-existing conditions. Obviously, all 30 million Americans with a rare disease have a pre-existing condition, so that is an incredibly important provision of the Affordable Care Act. And there are really three facets, subsets to that protection included within the ACA. The first being that the first is guaranteed issue, meaning that insurance companies have to offer and accept rare disease patients or individuals with pre-existing conditions onto their plans. They cannot reject them from signing up. The second is that they have to offer a certain baseline of benefits for individuals with pre-existing conditions. And the third is that they can't structure their premiums on the health status of the individual. So they can't charge an individual with a rare disease substantially higher premiums than, let's say, healthy individuals under the same plan. That's called community rating. Everyone has to be charged the same premium. So that's the first important kind of subset of protections within the ACA. The second is a prohibition on the annual and lifetime caps. And then the third is the Medicaid piece of the Affordable Care Act, both the expansion as well as keeping the financing structure for Medicaid as it is. So as we look at the different proposals that are being put forward by Congress, we at NORD are looking at every single proposal to ensure that first, pre-existing condition discrimination is again prohibited, second, the annual and lifetime caps are again prohibited, and third, that Medicaid remains robust and accessible to individuals throughout the states in order to access it. So what we are doing to advocate for the protection of these provisions, we're doing many things. First and foremost, we are asking patients to share their stories around their experience pre-ACA and then post-ACA. If they were able to better find coverage after the enactment of the Affordable Care Act. Perhaps they were subject to annual and lifetime limits before the Affordable Care Act. Maybe they hit that cap and then didn't get any coverage afterwards. If that happened to you, please share your story with us so that we could use your story to really illustrate the importance of these ACA protections. We are also soliciting stories on high-risk pools. High-risk pools are kind of an insurance plan for individuals that are more expensive than the general public. Perhaps they have a pre-existing condition. And so prior to the ACA, a solution that states put in place to cover individuals who were rejected from getting coverage in the general group or individual health insurance market was to set up high-risk pools, which then allowed these individuals to get insurance through those high-risk pools. Now, within these pools, oftentimes the premiums were substantially more expensive. Oftentimes the benefits were rather skimpy, and then oftentimes there were also annual and lifetime caps on the amount of coverage individuals could get within the high-risk pools. So not only are we asking individuals to share their stories on annual and lifetime limits, we're also asking individuals to share their stories on if they were in a high-risk pool prior to the ACA and what that was like, what that coverage was like, just so we can again illustrate why high-risk pools may not be the solution that many are touting high-risk pools to be to cover individuals with pre-existing conditions. So what we're seeing on the Hill currently, it's still rather nebulous. It's still very much up in the air. We still don't have too many proposals from congressional Republicans or the administration on how to replace the Affordable Care Act. We are seeing some kind of individual proposals starting to trickle out of some committees of jurisdiction. And actually just yesterday, the House Energy and Commerce Committee put forward a proposal in bill form called the Pre-Existing Conditions Protection and Continuous Coverage Incentive Act of 2017. And they're actually going to be discussing this provision tomorrow morning at a hearing. So what this provision, what this bill does is it tries to keep all the same protections for individuals with pre-existing conditions that the Affordable Care Act provides. However, in our reading of the bill, we believe that it falls short. It does mandate guaranteed issue, so insurance companies cannot reject coverage for individuals with pre-existing conditions. It does mandate that insurance companies cannot discriminate against individuals with pre-existing conditions based upon their benefit structure, so they can't make their benefit structure within the plan particularly lax or skimpy for individuals with pre-existing conditions. But what it does not do, it does not mandate community rating for individuals with pre-existing conditions. So again, it would open up the allowability for insurance companies to charge premiums, substantially higher premiums to individuals with pre-existing conditions than their healthy counterparts within the plans. So this is obviously very concerning to us. This is something we saw prior to the Affordable Care Act, and we saw individuals essentially being priced out of the market because they were being priced at their health status rather than community rating. So the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is circulating a letter that's going to be sent to the House Energy and Commerce Committee later this afternoon, likely, maybe tomorrow morning. And because of the very tight timeline. The deadline to sign on to that is 3 p.m. So hopefully maybe we can get that letter out to the folks on the call in case you're interested in signing on. But what it essentially does is list the same concerns that I just listed to the Energy and Commerce Committee, telling them that you're getting close with the bill, but you're not getting close enough. You need to ensure that community rating is also included within any plan for pre-existing condition protections. So I already mentioned that we're asking advocates to share their stories. Over the course of the next month or two, we're going to be doing a lot more on the Affordable Care Act. We're going to be developing what we're calling principle papers, in which we list what principles we would require in order to support any kind of replacement plan for the Affordable Care Act. We're also going to be having many meetings on the Hill. We're going to be providing individuals in our community with advocacy alerts to send an email to your congressman, to your senator, to call your congressman and your senator about why the protections within the Affordable Care Act are important to you. We'll be likely developing additional coalition letters, and then we're also going to be participating in Rare Disease Week here in Washington, D.C., the week of the 27th. And we'll be providing materials for individuals to go to Congress on March 1st. And among the other options for advocacy, to also advocate on the Affordable Care Act and why the protections within the Affordable Care Act are important to maintain for individuals with pre-existing conditions. So in the meeting minutes or whatever we send out after this meeting, we can include, I'll send a link over to the Rdla folks for links to share your stories around high-risk pools, around annual and lifetime limits, just around ACA in general. And then we can use those stories up on the Hill to really illustrate why these protections are so important. So with that, I will pause and turn it back over to the Rdla folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do you have a moment to take questions?
Just a moment or two. I do have to hop off in a minute, but thank you.
Okay. I've just unmuted the line, so if anyone has any questions, go for it.
Hi, this is Stephanie Krenrich from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I just wanted to thank Paul for telling all of you about the letter that we're circulating. I will get a copy of that letter to the folks at Rdla so that they can send it around to you. And as Paul said, our deadline is at 3 o'clock today. Sorry for the tight turnaround.
Does anyone else have any questions for Paul?
I just had a comment. This is Leslie Rogers from Oregon. Paul, I hope you get a chance to look at the PowerPoint afterwards, because I know you got to go, about the 1915K plan, Congressional Medicaid added to the CARE Act. And there's now about a half-dozen states that rely on it. So when it goes, disability services at the state level, as we're going to hear in a couple minutes, are going to be in chaos, at least in Oregon. So thanks for your work, Paul.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. We'll take a look at that, and we'll be sure to include that within our advocacy. Thank you.
This is Mirta from the ABDA. NORD is circulating the letter from Cystic Fibrosis as well. So there's a call going on right now with NORD membership, and they're asking people to sign on.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul. With that, I will move it on over to Steve Grossman, who will discuss the issues facing the FDA in 2017. Steve?
All right. Can I be heard? I wanted to check. Can I be heard?
Yep, loud and clear.
Good. How are you? Good. Good.
Okay.
A little colder. Yeah, it is.
Very good.
I'm wearing my other coat to work this morning, and then I saw what the temp was, and got my winter.
Okay, go ahead,
Hello?
Steve.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this time. I'm recognizing we're probably behind on the schedule, so let me try and move through this quickly and leave enough time for questions. I'm Steve Grossman of HPS Group. I will also make reference to the Alliance for Stronger Fda. You can contact me on that as well, because I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Alliance. But I'm here speaking today on behalf of HPS Group. First slide. What's happening now is the question I get asked most. Big policy decisions are being deferred. The second question, I guess, is what about our review? What about our approval? What about the schedule for the drug that our disease group is hoping for? And there's no indication of any slowdown, and I don't think there is any slowdown in meeting PDUFA deadlines and moving drugs and devices through the approval process. At the moment, actings are in charge. Deputy Commissioner Ostroff, he's the Deputy Commissioner for Foods, is now the acting commissioner. He did this once before in between the departure of Dr. Hamburg and the arrival of Dr. Califf. So he's, if you will, experienced at being the acting. The Trump beachhead teams that arrived right after inauguration are at HHS and at FDA, and they provide guidance to the acting commissioner so that he doesn't do anything that reduces their discretion or ability when the new commissioner comes on board to set policy and whatever changes they think are correct. For a benchmark, because people are sort of like, oh, they're late, they're going too slow, da-da-da-da-da-da. The benchmark I would use is 2009, and based on that, we're still 6 weeks away from when Dr. Hamburg was nominated, and her confirmation took just about 2 months. I would think the new commissioner might well go faster than that for a bunch of reasons, but so any announcement before mid-March is, and I think it's likely based on something President Trump said on yesterday when he met with pharma leaders. My guess is it will be sooner than March 15th, but whether it's this week, next week, or later in the month, a little hard to say. Next slide. Trying to characterize what the state of play is at FDA, and I would focus on 3 immediate uncertainties that face the FDA. The first is the regulatory freeze that was put into place last week, and which was followed up on Monday of this week with a protocol for eliminating 2 regs for every new one. A hiring freeze for 90 days. There's some new LMB guidance this morning. I'll go into each of these where I think the regulatory freeze is going, where I think the budget freeze is going. And then the third uncertainty is who will be the new commissioner, since clearly that makes a difference. With regard to the regulatory freeze, I think there's a lot of understandable concern about what it means for FDA to be asked to eliminate 2 regs for every new reg they propose. And the administration has already clarified that guidance documents generally will be considered regs for the purpose of the cutback. So looking at it just on its face, this would be a gargantuan change in the way FDA does business. I think that it's an agency that, unlike the ones that the president has focused on, it's an agency where regulation is generally speaking welcomed, and that if there's items that people are concerned about, there's one here and one there, maybe a couple of here. There isn't like 2/3 of the regs are unnecessary. But what I expect to have happen is there will be further guidance from OMB. One of the big questions is what metric will be used. If you take a reg and slice it in half, do you get credit for for one reg eliminated? No one knows what the metric will be by which the counting will be done. And it's also unclear whether types of regs or types of agencies or types of whatever will be exempt. So reason for much concern, a lot of uncertainty at FDA, but truthfully the details aren't out yet to really know what impact it'll have on the agency. Same with the hiring freeze, very broad assertion of, of policy on the part of the new administration, but just as I expect will happen with the regulatory freeze, we're starting to get more information about how it will be applied. There is an argument that all of FDA comes under the public safety exemption, but there's no certainty of that. This morning, OMB released the first set of guidances for implementing the hiring freeze, and for one thing, commission core officers are out. There's mention of safe food and drugs as qualifying for an exemption, but we don't know whether that'll be interpreted broadly to include, say, almost all of FDA, or whether it will be interpreted narrowly, say, safe food and drugs is really what the inspectors are about. So a little hard to know, but each turn of clarification seems to be going in FDA's direction of being treated as a bit different than the general applicability of these broad sweeping statements. I'm hoping that's what will happen with the reg freeze as well. Now, in terms of the commissioner, there are three names that have been widely circulated: Jim O'Neill, Scott Gottlieb, and I'm afraid I don't remember Dr. Golfo's first name. And also one that's been mentioned around a lot is former Representative Jack Kingston, who used to chair the Ag FDA Appropriations Subcommittee in the House. And while he's not a doctor, which is the traditional qualification, he would be a non-doctor who's very familiar with the agency. It has been customary to wait for the Secretary of HHS to be confirmed, and then he or she gets to interview candidates set over by the White House, et cetera. It's a little hard based on what the President said yesterday in his meeting with the farm industry. It sounds like he's already identified a candidate, and so it may not wait for Dr. Price to be part of the decision making. Or if he is, he's been part of an informal decision making. Next slide. What's going to happen in Congress with FDA this year? There'll be the confirmation hearings, and there's always a chance that the nominee will be controversial and that the hearings will be dramatic and confrontational. I think it more likely that they will nominate somebody who will be generally recognized as qualified. At least I hope they pick somebody who's generally recognized as qualified. And then the real purpose of confirmation hearings is not really to assess their qualifications, but to get them to answer questions that, in effect, pre-decide certain policy questions that they'll be faced with once they're in office. So very important. I usually tell clients that if there are issues that they want FDA to do something a particular way, it's a good idea to try and get a member of the committee to offer up a question to the nominee when the confirmation hearing occurs. User-free reauthorization, two things to know: that we don't know what it will look like this year, but we do know that in 2007 and in 2012, they were vehicles for new initiatives. And while we're told that at one point that Chairman Alexander in the Senate was thinking about a clean bill, that Senator Burr was talking about things that he thought ought to be put into the user fee, not into the user fee agreements, but into the user fee bill. So that's a to be decided. In any case, you will hear people say that they have until September 30th, and they do technically, but realistically, Congress will probably have to approach user fees in a hurry. If they're not done by August 1st, it then triggers some governmental processes that are unpleasant and consequential, one of which is the FDA employee unions have to be notified that layoffs are possible starting October 1, which even when people know it won't come to that, always puts people on edge. Another consequence is the first wave of user fee invoices go out August. They can't go out if there's no new agreement in place. And that means that from a cash flow, which actually matters, from a cash flow point of view, FDA may not have the resources on October 1 that it needs to have. So think in terms of this is supposed to be a relatively quick process for Congress, and that's what I think there's enough awareness on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and Senate Labor that they will be moving it along pretty quickly. Of course, without going into any details of the potential for drug pricing legislation, the main point for here is FDA is involved in increasing competition, things like approving generic drugs, approving biosimilars. Those improve market competition, but it's never been asked to do drug pricing, and they would prefer not to, but that's at risk in the current, as they get on to drug pricing, because some people's proposals would give a role to FDA. I think that would be unfortunate, but as you look at what Congress and FDA is going to be up to this year, that could well be one of them. Next slide. My last point is FDA resources are at a critical point. The gap between FDA funding and responsibilities has been widening. For those of you who follow the larger appropriations process, non-defense discretionary spending is capped. Further cuts are possible, led by President Trump or Congress, and FDA cannot live user fees alone, and for good reasons. I'm happy to talk to people. It doesn't fit in this presentation, but happy to talk to people about it. The one organization that is devoted to advocacy for resources for FDA is the Alliance for Stronger Fda. I happen to be one of the co-founders and the deputy executive director. I encourage you to send me an email, give me a call, and talk about membership if you're not already a member. Rdla is, NORD is, cystic fibrosis is. I'm not sure who else is on the call, but a number of the players that you may be familiar with are indeed already members. So finally, last slide. The Trump administration, clearly a work in progress, but they're moving along quickly. I think the FDA commissioner will be appointed soon. Major policy decisions are being deferred. There will be a regulatory reform initiative. I don't think there's any question about that, but it is completely open as to whether it's a modest additional changes to regulation at FDA or whether it's much more far-reaching. And last of all, Congress will have impact both through the confirmation hearing and through user fees. That's what I think is known, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I did the lines. Anyone have questions for Steve, please go ahead.
Hey, Steve, this is Max from Every Life. Just a question for you. Curious, has the Alliance weighed in on any of the nominees at all? And I'm mentioning this because I know, some of the nominees calling for dramatic changes at FDA, including some who said that efficacy could not be part of FDA's kind of core mission going forward. So I'm curious if you guys, or if you have a preference for any of those potential nominees.
Well, our long-standing practice going back to actually before 2009, before Dr. Hamburg, was to not take a position on individual candidates. And this mostly reflects the fact that the strength of the organization is that we have more than 150 members who themselves all have different views and different priorities. And what unites them is the need for more resources for the agency. And we stick pretty much with that and do not try and pick winners and losers on commissioner. It's obviously that we are following it very closely, and if you want to give me a call tomorrow and discuss it further, I'd be delighted to hear from you.
Thank you. Great. Does anyone else have any questions for Steve? Okay, sounds like, Steve, you answered all their questions. So,
I wish I knew more answers myself.
Don't we all? Thank you, Steve. Next, we'll have Leslie Rogers, who will speak regarding the Community First Choice 1915 K Plan waiver. I'm going to pass it over to Leslie.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody hear me? Hello?
Leslie, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So welcome. I'm a parent of a child with cardiofaciocutaneous syndrome and West syndrome, and so it manifests as cerebral palsy. So she's suction dependent and tube fed, so we receive these services, and it just was a stroke of luck that the K plan happened to be implemented right before my daughter started to receive these services, so we lucked out. She's 3.5 now, so we've been receiving them for 2 years. So I can talk about sort of the implementation along with other things. And my parents have adopted 2 special needs kids when I was younger, so I've sort of lived the life of advocacy, and I thank everybody for being on the call. So let's get into it. See if it'll let me advance slides. There we go. Looks like it got cut off a little bit. So when you take a look at the 1915 K Plan waiver, the Community First Choice, what are these waivers? Well, basically, they provide services to people who would otherwise be in a higher level of care, a nursing home or a hospital. Is how it's defined by Medicaid, Medicare. And there was recently a request for information that was put together by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, that did a great job sort of summarizing the history of community-based care, the closing of institutions in America, and how the transition to community-based care has happened historically. So hopefully the slides will go out and you guys will be able to click on these links yourselves. Looks like some of them, yeah, they're live. So you guys can follow the links at some point, or if the PowerPoint gets sent along, you can follow the links. But the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services implements and sort of oversees all the rules that go along with this program, and the states also implement their own rules to carry it out at the state level. But why would a state do this? And the real reason is they get an extra 6% covered by a federal match for the services provided through this waiver. And the goal is to keep individuals in the community and out of higher levels of care. States that have accepted it: California, Montana, Oregon, Texas, and Maryland. Other states are considering it, but a lot of them are kind of looking to see how it plays out. Oregon took the lead and has implemented it fully, and we're sort of in budget cycle number 2 now, and we'll get to that toward the end as to how that played out. And I'm hoping some other states are on and can maybe share how it's being carried out in their state: Texas, Maryland, Montana, or California. And so in Oregon, and this is all part of the Affordable Care Act, so it hangs in the balance. And the reason I decided to come and give this presentation today was because I felt like there was a whole lot of people around the country who didn't even know this was an option, that their states could take this on, and that it was going to come and go without people really seeing a lot of the benefits. So benefit number 1 for everybody sitting on a waiver wait list. In some states, it's upwards of 20 years. There are no wait lists for the K Plan waiver, and it's mandated. So it's considered an entitlement, which means if you qualify for the services, you receive those services without delays. It provides respite care. You know, people get up to hundreds of hours a month to provide care for people in their homes as opposed to nursing facilities. And the whole point is that providing care in the home is less expensive, and that's been proved out time and again, and that's why states are continually pushing toward community-based care instead of nursing homes and higher levels of care. The amount of hours is based on a needs assessment, and so they do an assessment, they award hours, and then you hire your own workers, caregivers, and the caregivers are paid by the state. And they have a whole secondary company that oversees all the payments and all the tax pieces, so they give you your tax identification number and all that stuff. So there's facilitation from the state level to help with that, which is nice. It provides up to $5,000 annually for equipment in our state, which is really a benefit to a lot of people that get denied by insurance companies and, you know, have to find other ways to pay for things. It also expanded the training and the understanding of something called Presumptive Medical, which to me is one of the key pieces to making this all work. And Presumptive Medical basically makes Medicare a payer of last resort. They call it a tertiary payee. So your primary insurances will pay if you have insurance, and then Medicare or Medicaid pays whatever's left over. The point being is if they're trying to keep people from being bankrupted, basically, because once they're bankrupted, they're on Medicare anyway. And so this is kind of a brilliant play on the state's part, and because it diverts all costs, you know, beyond basically the max out-of-pocket back toward the private insurance, and keeps families of disabled people, and this is just for the disabled person, keeps families of disabled people from, you know, going bankrupt from hitting their max out-of-pocket every year. So anything else I want to say about that? I feel like that's sort of a critical piece to making the K plan function. And some more support for community inclusion. It's a large problem in our state that disabled children have really nowhere to go for preschool or child care. They're often blocked from private child cares because of their disabilities or their needs are too significant. And so this provides the ability to have a PSW, a personal service worker or caregiver, go with the child and support them so they can attend child care or preschool. It cannot be school district funded preschool, but private preschools. And service coordination through case management. So they basically become your case managers. And for implementation, at other states, I've provided the link for the final report to Congress there, as well as a brochure about what services are provided in Oregon. And next, so how does it work? The basic process is you request that your child be evaluated for disability services. If they're deemed to be of a level of need that and a level of disability that qualifies them, then they go through what's called choice advising. You learn about all the options through the K plan and all the services, and then they do their needs assessment. Sometimes the choice advising happens before or after the needs assessment. It's kind of up to the case management. And the needs assessment determines the number of hours and services you'll qualify for, things like applied behavioral analysis and 24-hour respite care and just hours of personal service work. So in Oregon, what has happened is we have a large shortfall this biennium. Our state budget's on a 2-year cycle. And so K-plan services, unfortunately, were cut by 30% this go-around. And it's resulted in a lot of people losing their services. And this is even before the Affordable Care Act repeal discussion. But the lesson moving forward is that services like the K-plan, they don't fluctuate with the business cycle. The need doesn't change just because budgets change. And so, you know, tying this to, if you're thinking about trying to get it implemented in your state, or if it's already implemented in your state, things like tying, you know, the level of funding to more stable sources, or if cuts are needing to be made tied to, say, education that has to be cut by the same percentage or something like that, to try to stabilize the funding so it doesn't yo-yo so much. And that is about it. I know it's a whirlwind, but I wanted to be quick and concise so that I could answer some questions. So I'll go back. Hello? Vignesh?
Hello?
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 I guess I could start answering questions. I don't know if Vignesh is there, but
I am here.
Oh, you are here. Great. Does anybody have any questions about the implementation of the K plan in Oregon?
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay, you guys are welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So now we'll have Rachel Radomski with Vertex give an overview of the Expert Act. Give me just a moment while I get her unmuted and give her control. Hi, Rachel. Are you there?
Hi, Vignesh. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I will try to go as fast as possible because I know we're running out of time here, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about this issue today with the community and the folks on the call. So what we wanted to talk about is a piece of legislation called the Expanding and Promoting Expertise in Review of Rare Treatments Act. Oh, hold on. Got it. I'm hitting advance and it's not in, oh, perfect, gotcha. And so for those of you that don't know anything about Vertex, we are a rare biotechnology pharmaceutical manufacturer. We make products for people with cystic fibrosis and have had 2 approved drugs on the market, the first one being approved in 2012. So as we've sort of been able to bring drugs to market for rare disease patients, one of the things that we've run into, particularly with Medicaid, is the pharmacy and therapeutics and drug utilization review boards. So what we found is that current drug review processes often result in inappropriate restrictions. So after a drug is approved by the FDA, these P&T committees or DUR boards make a determination as to whether or not they're going to cover the drug and place them on their preferred drug list, and if there would be any sort of prior authorization criteria put into place. And one of the things that we found in dealing with cystic fibrosis patients across the country is that these P&T committees and DUR boards, they often meet without adequate notice to stakeholders. So a lot of our patients who are on Medicaid won't even have any idea if the drug that they're interested in having their child or spouse or anyone beyond is being reviewed. And then when the drug is being reviewed by these committees, they're generally composed of pharmacists and general practice physicians, folks that don't really have any expertise in specialized treatments such as rare disease therapies. And then what ends up happening is that there's inappropriate PDL placement, so the drug ends up not being covered because it's not necessarily understood by the folks on these committees, or there's overly restrictive criteria placed on patients before they can get access to the drug. Let's go back. So one of the things that we took a look at, and some of you might be familiar with this legislation, is that there was a version of Expert that was included in the last PDUFA reauthorization. So in 2012, a bill passed that helped expand consultation between FDA and external disease experts, and including patient advocates during the drug review process. So it's our thought that the same kind of process should be implemented onto Medicaid as FDA, so that given the complex nature of rare diseases, states should solicit expert testimony when making coverage decisions, and that those coverage decisions should be transparent, predictable, and allow for appropriate public input. So we've been working with some other stakeholders to draft legislation, and so what that legislation says is that drug reviews should incorporate input from both the public and clinical experts. So in the case of Medicaid, it would require a published notice to the public of when these P&T or DUR meetings are happening, at least 60 days in advance. It would require a public comment period of 60 days after the draft policy is put forward, and it would allow for P&T and DUR meetings to consider the advice of experts, including the patient advocacy community, as well as specialized clinicians that understand these kind of complex rare diseases. And so the current status and next steps are, there's actually some states that are already doing a very good job of this, allowing for the public to comment and for clinicians that specialize in rare diseases to participate. California, Colorado, and Oregon are states where this process is actually taking place. And then we have draft legislative language, as I mentioned, where we may pursue this in other states, including Arizona, Arkansas, Iowa, and Utah. Of course, the ultimate goal would be to introduce this as federal legislation, which would preempt anything in the states. But for those of you that have worked on federal legislation in the past, you know how difficult passing a federal bill is, but we still have hope. And so we're hoping to introduce a bill in this Congress and work in partnership with the patient advocacy community who's interested in these issues. Right now we are working potentially on doing a sign-on letter to support this legislation and these policy efforts. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them now, or my email address is up there and anyone can reach out to me at any time.
Great. We have time for exactly one question, so give me just a moment to unmute the lines. Does anyone have a question for Rachel?
Hi, Rachel, is this for orphan drugs only?
Yeah, so it is for rare disease therapies. My colleague Dan Bowers is here with me as well. He's a lawyer and helped draft some of this up, so he can answer that question too.
Yeah, it's for rare disease drugs and biological products that are genetically targeted.
I know there might be one more question, but Big Nash, I don't know if we have time.
Go right ahead.
Sorry, this is Nick Taylor with Alexion Pharmaceuticals. I'm new to this group as well as Alexion and NHO. Rachel, thank you so much for that overview. I just wanted to kind of high level, this is different from the 2012 version in the sense that this is mostly being geared towards the states and it's including Medicare or Medicaid? How is
so the 2012 version was, the 2012 version was federal legislation that was focused on FDA, so the drug review process at FDA. This legislation is focused on Medicaid, so this is the coverage side. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Allow for the same things that the FDA bill did. So it would allow patients, patient organizations, and especially clinicians to weigh in.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. With that, we will continue with my colleague, Max Bronstein, who is here, and he'll give an update on the Open Act and the state of play in the new Congress.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Vicki, for having me on the call. And I just realized there's actually about 50 of you on the line today, so it's great. I'm very pleased to see the good turnout we've had, and certainly there's a lot of action going on Capitol Hill these days, and certainly I think a lot of it's being motivated by the new administration and some of the changes coming through. So I'm glad we had time to cover those today, but I decided that I want to focus on the Open Act in this presentation because I know many of the organizations on the line have signed on to endorse the legislation, and folks have been pinging me asking for updates. So wanted to give you a sense of where we are. And for those who are new, I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly. I think some of these top-line statistics people already know pretty well, but there is a huge innovation gap for patients with rare diseases in terms of most patients not actually having treatment that's been developed for their particular disease. In terms of treatments that are available, the standard of care is really off-label for a lot of rare diseases. And there's some challenges that come with off-label use, and basically it stems from not having the amount of evidence you would have for a drug that's fully gone through the clinical trial process for that specific disease or specific indication. So what that means is you don't have kind of ideal safety and efficacy data. There are some preliminary studies that are done for off-label indications, but it's not as thorough as when a drug is sort of developed from scratch for one particular indication. And as a result of this, it can be challenging to get reimbursed. And I'm hearing that that's not only for off-label medications and therapies, but it can also be for surgeries or procedures that are not typically used for that specific rare disease in question. And we have also been hearing more from the FDA. They are growing more concerned about off-label use. In fact, just recently issued a very lengthy memo kind of stating and highlighting their views on off-label usage. And then on top of that, we know that rare disease therapies can be more costly because you're talking about developing a therapy for a very small patient population in many instances. So as a result, those medications tend to be priced at a different point than medications developed for major market uses. So, and this brings me to the OPEN Act, which is the legislation we've been working on for years, but the goal here is really to ensure that there's more therapy options available to rare disease patients. And the way that we're proposing to do that through the OPEN Act is by actually using repurposing, meaning taking drugs that have already been developed and are already on the market and actually repurposing them for a rare disease indication. And the reason why we think this is so valuable is because if you look at the drug development process and the timeline, in some cases it can take up to a decade to get an entirely new drug developed. But if you repurpose, remember, you're already starting with something that's already gone through that clinical development process. So it's far more cost efficient, it's far faster. But the challenge here is that, yes, there are some repurposing trials that are going on or expansions of indications from a label, but overall, we think it's an area that is being hugely under-leveraged simply because there's not enough incentives out there for companies to take a drug that's already out there and test it in a rare disease population. So what the OPEN Act would actually do is provide a 6-month extension of exclusivity for compounds that are repurposed for a rare indication. So that's the incentive component that is really supposed to encourage industry to undertake more repurposing trials. And the idea is to really create kind of a repurposing industry that's really focused just on working through these types of clinical trials because they are distinct from starting from scratch in the clinical development process. So again, we do view this as something that could make a big impact for patients in terms of the number of therapies that are available. And it would do that by generating lots of clinical data, the evidence that's really needed and necessary in order for the FDA to take a therapy from the use as an off-label to get it actually put onto the label. And the downstream impacts of that is that payers are more likely to reimburse for those therapies that are on label. And then, if there's a repurposing trial that happens and it turns out that, the hypothesis did not work out, that drug is not actually effective for a rare disease, then that's really important information as well, and that ideally would get out to healthcare providers because, knowing if a drug is ineffective is very valuable information and can actually help save the healthcare system money, as well as help, prevent a patient from getting on a drug that's not actually going to have any health benefit to them. So basically, I touched on this earlier, but The reason, why this is so appealing is because when you're repurposing something that was developed for a very common disease, they tend to be priced at a level that's more for a larger population. So the kind of elevator pitch, if you're looking for one, is that, we think open could double the number of low-cost therapies available to rare disease patients. So, that could be your kind of major takeaway here. I want to tell you just very briefly about how we came up with the Open Act, because it was actually based on something that has been law for over a decade in the U.S. So for a long time, and this is still the case to some degree, we have hundreds of medicines, approved medicines that are on the market, but there's not great information and data about their safety and efficacy in terms of children. So what BPCA did, again, this was a law that was passed in 2002, was actually create an incentive for companies to do studies in children on these medicines. And if they did the study, the incentive would be exactly the same incentive we're proposing for open, which is that extension of exclusivity. And the impact has been that, these studies have been carried out by people in industry, and the result was that we now have 500, or actually over 500 label changes. So there's a growing body of evidence about use of therapies in pediatrics, which would not have been possible were it not for the incentive put in place by BPCA. So that's kind of where open came from. I'll give you a quick recap on where open was in the last Congress. So we did run the bill in the last Congress, and these pictures here are of our bipartisan champions and co-sponsors. And open actually passed the House in the first Cures package that was voted on back in July 2015, but when Cures came back at the end of the last session, it was actually not included in the final package. And what we learned was that there were objections from two key Senate Democrats, in particular Senator Murray and Senator Warren were both very concerned about the legislation. So going forward, we're definitely going to have to educate and work with those offices to make sure that they see the benefits of this legislation. So looking forward, our goal is to have the Open Act actually reintroduced in the next, probably in the next couple weeks here. As far as we know, the PDUFA vehicle is likely going to be our kind of best shot for getting open passed. And Steve talked a little bit about this, but in terms of the timeline here, committee hearings should hopefully be starting within about a month from now, and hopefully we'll start to wrap up by April, and then all of this has to be decided on and kind of completed by the end of July/August 1st to really avoid the disruptions at the FDA that Steve touched on earlier. So this is kind of our strategy moving forward. I also want to point out that we revamped our website around open. So if you guys are doing outreach on behalf of open, as I know many of you are, feel free to use this website as a resource. Should also point out that we have over 170 patient organizations who have signed on to endorse the Open Act. And if folks are interested in signing and they have not yet signed on, you can email me directly, and that email address is there on the screen. You can also go on the website to check to see if your organization is listed there. We should have everyone up there now, so please double check. I also want to mention that with Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill right around the corner, the Open Act will be one of the 4 asks that advocates can make during Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. So if you're planning to attend that, you will have the opportunity to talk with your members of Congress directly about why the Open Act is so important. But as we're gearing up for this, if folks are aware of news stories or academic papers or anything else that highlights the potential impact for repurposing of existing therapies for rare diseases, please send them my way. This is really important as we go to Congress. They're looking for this type of information. So if you send it to me, I can hopefully get it repackaged and pass that along to folks in Congress or others who are interested in the potential impact here. So I'm going to close with that, but I also want to just say thank you for everyone on the phone who has stood up and fought for the Open Act. I know, in the last Congress it was a tough fight and it was a long haul, but I'm actually feeling very optimistic that we can get open across the finish line this year. So thank you guys again for all of your efforts, and hope we can count on you again in this Congress. So I'll pause here and see if folks have any questions. You can write in using the chat function, and Viggy is unmuting the lines right now. So feel free to ask any questions if you have them.
Oh, I graduated, yeah.
Questions? If you guys think of any, feel free to shoot email. I'll be happy to get a reply and answer back. There will be on the Open Act as
I'm actually on a phone call right now.
One came in from Paul, who our previous co-sponsors will also be signing on to support Open in the new Congress, but we're still trying to finalize that. But I'm pretty sure in the House we'll have Congressman Bill Rackus from Florida and Congressman Butterfield from North Carolina as our co-sponsors, and in the Senate we'll be having Senator Hatch and Senator Klobuchar. So it hasn't been 100% finalized yet, but I'm pretty confident that we'll see them come back.
Looks like that fits, and with that, I will we'll move it on to our colleague Stephanie Fisher, who will discuss Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Viggy. Do I advance the slides, or are you going to advance them?
I'm getting you set up for it, but
okay. Well, hi, everyone. This is Stephanie Fisher. I'm the Senior Director of Patient Engagement and Communications at the Rdla Foundation for Rare Disease. And the entire Rdla team is gearing up to make this our best and largest Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill yet. I think you're probably all aware why it needs to be our biggest and best yet. We have a lot of new members of the House and Senate to educate. They may not have heard from members of their local community who are patients or caregivers or otherwise affected. So why should you attend? You can learn about the key legislative initiatives. As Max mentioned, the Open Act will be one of them. This is your opportunity to educate legislators and their staff on the unmet needs of the rare disease community and build your relationship with them. Raise awareness of your specific rare disease and rare diseases affecting 1 in 10 Americans generally, and network with other rare disease advocates, the legislators, staff, leaders at FDA and NIH, who we hope will join us for some of the activities this week, and also representatives of biopharmaceutical companies. So we have several events throughout the week from Monday, February 27th through Thursday, March 2nd, and we will go through these. I realize folks have been with us for more than an hour, so I'll go through these pretty quickly. I do want to mention that all of the events are free for patients, caregivers, parents, and other advocates, but we do require advanced registration for each event to make sure that we don't exceed fire capacity and to make sure that we have enough food for everyone. The first event is on Monday the 27th. It's hosted by the NIH. It's Rare Disease Day at NIH. If you attend or participate by live stream, it's one link to do either. You can hear from NIH leaders. My colleague Max Bronstein will be speaking. In the past, leaders from NORD and Global Genes and Uplifting Athletes have also participated. There are several breaks, so it's good networking with NIH staff and also other patient advocates. There is an exhibiting area, so you can learn more about some of the other organizations in rare disease advocacy. And the link to register is on the bottom. It's also on the main Rare Disease Week webpage. That was the link on the first slide, rareadvocates.org/RDW. That's where you'll find links to register for all of the events that week, as well as other useful materials. So our first official event is the cocktail reception, film screening, and panel discussion on Monday evening. The film that we're screening this year is up for air. It follows Jerry Cahill, who's a 60-year-old coach with cystic fibrosis. It follows him for 5 years before and after a double lung transplant, and that is presented by Vertex Pharmaceuticals. There's a cocktail reception followed by the documentary screening and then a panel discussion. That is a great opportunity to meet other advocates. You are welcome to wear jeans and a T-shirt with your disease or disease organization. That's a great starting point for conversations. The next day, Tuesday the 28th, from 9 to 5, we'll have an all-day legislative conference. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. That's where you'll get your lobby day schedules. My colleague Lisa Schill is arranging a very comprehensive agenda to make sure that everyone who's there is fully prepared to go to the Hill and be effective in their conversations with legislators and staff. The topics include what to expect from the new Congress and President Trump's administration. There's key legislative initiatives, how to prepare for Hill meetings. We'll even do a mock meeting so you can kind of watch what works and what doesn't in a fun way, how to build and maintain a relationship with members of Congress and staff. And then we have breakout sessions, so you can pick whichever one is most relevant to you. I'm excited this year. For the first time, we're going to have a breakout session on advocacy for young adults. And we welcome anyone in the age range around 13 to 25 or so for patients and siblings who are looking to be more involved. How can they make a difference? We'll have Shira Straughn of We Are More and Sick Chicks and Emily Mueller. And they were very active in 21st Century Cure, so they're going to be sharing their experience with some of the other young adults who are there. I did want to mention the legislative conference will be live streamed, so if you can't join us in person, you'll be able to watch that, and we'll be adding a link to register to that main Rare Disease Week webpage within the next day. So to start Lobby Day, we're going to kick off with a breakfast on Wednesday, March 1st at 7:30. Max is going to have trouble topping himself. Last year we had newly confirmed FDA Commissioner Dr. Califf. We also had Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman Brett Upton, and then the Open Act lead sponsor, Congressman Bilirakis, speak. So Max is lining up hopefully an equally impressive panel of speakers to talk to all of the advocates who are in the room, and you will have a chance to ask questions. We had several advocates pose questions to Dr. Califf, which is pretty cool, and also going to be able to ask questions directly of the FDA Commissioner. So please plan to join us for that. Again, always free. You just need to register in advance. A Lobby Day on Capitol Hill, that's the main reason most folks join us. We schedule the Hill meetings for you. We ask between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. You receive your schedule at the legislative conference, which is required for all attendees. We want to make sure that you're prepared to talk about the issues and really make it an effective meeting. You have a choice of meeting with just your representative and both senators, or joining a team, in which case we'll request a meeting with your representative, both senators, and then you'll join other advocates from your state or region in their meetings with their representatives. The deadline to register is February 12th to give us time to schedule the meeting. And I did want to mention, you are not obligated to talk about any specific legislation. What's important to me as a rare disease patient might not be your priority. So while we're going to cover 4 or 5 key legislative issues, it's up to you what you want to bring up in each of your meetings. The Rare Artist Reception, you can reward yourself for a very productive day on Capitol Hill. The Rare Artist Reception is from 5 to 7 in the Russell Senate Office Building. We'll have some of the artwork from our 2016 Rare Artist Reception, and we're really thrilled we're going to have some of the rare artists there to talk about how they're able to communicate their experience with rare disease as a patient or a sibling or even a medical professional, how they express themselves and their experience with rare disease through art. It's a great opportunity to network with Hill staff. Anyone who's been on the Hill before knows how much Capitol Hill staff love free food and drinks. So we expect a great turnout again this year. And the final event of the week is the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus briefing. That'll be on Thursday from 12 to 1:30 in the Dirksen Senate Office Building. The speakers have not been revealed yet, but the topic is advancing rare disease treatments in the era of cures, meaning 21st century cures, and healthcare reform. So certainly a very timely panel, and we will provide lunch. And then after the caucus briefing, everyone who is left and interested will proceed to the Capitol Hill steps so we can take our group picture for Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. Now, if you're not able to join us in person for Rare Disease Week, there are a few options of how you can join us to make sure that your voice is heard. The first is to submit your personal story as a patient, a caregiver, a parent, a sibling. We really want to hear from you. We take your story, you're able to submit a photo, and then we hand deliver it to your representative and senators. And honestly, we do not have a lot of submissions so far. So I would, if you're not joining us in person, I would appreciate personally if you're able to fill out this form. You're able to say, you know, your connection to rare disease, and you're able to select what you want your representative and senators to do to meet the needs of the rare disease community. It shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. And like I said, we will hand deliver it on lobby day to make sure that your elected officials hear from you. As I mentioned, we're also live streaming the legislative conference, and Rare Disease Day at NIH is also live streamed. So there are a few ways that you can join us, if not in person, then remotely. I know I went over this very quickly. We're actually having a deep dive webinar on Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. We'll walk through each event in more detail. We'll talk about dress code. We'll talk about some of the logistics. We'll talk about, for those of you who are joining us, maybe this is your first time, you want to do some preparation or print some materials to read on the plane or the train or the bus. And then we're going to have a large period of time dedicated to your questions so that people have the info that they need so that they can arrive confident, ready to learn on the 27th of February. So the webinar is February 28th at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. There is the link. It's also on the main Rare Disease Week webpage that I mentioned earlier, and it's on this slide as well. And I'm happy to take questions. I know we're running late. My email address is up there. Feel free to follow up. And I do have a question. Are we able to share what the 4 priorities are? Max and Vicki, I don't believe we've identified all 4 yet, but Max and Vicki will be determining those, so they might be able to take this question.
All right, yeah, happy to. We actually just made this decision yesterday, but we did decide what the 4 asks will be, one of which will be the Open Act, as I mentioned. The next will be ask regarding appropriations or funding for the federal government. I'm trying to determine how to phrase that, but we know that, there was new funding authorized in 21st century cures. That the agencies right now are kind of on a hold steady budget pattern for this fiscal year. So, the ask will probably address those and some other components relating to funding for federal agencies. Tracy had asked earlier about the caucus. That will also be another ask that folks, they can ask their members to join the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus. And then we'll also have an ask about healthcare reforms / Affordable Care Act changes. So we'll be working with NORD on that particular request. So just to clarify, the 4 asks will be Open Act, funding for the federal government / appropriations, Rare Disease Congressional Caucus, and healthcare reform.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions before we close up for the day?
This is Terry Bjorklund, and I was just wondering, I got on the call very late, just a little bit ago, and I just wanted to know, will there be a packet and talking points on these areas?
For Rare Disease Week, you mean?
Yeah, for the lobby day.
Yeah, so on the legislative conference, in addition to having speakers talk about the key legislative priorities, you'll receive a booklet that has talking points on the key legislative priorities. It has a map of the Capitol. It'll have some tips on meeting with officials in case you want to kind of refresh your memory on Wednesday morning or on a break in between meetings. So like I said, we do our best to prepare you for effective meetings for Lobby Day during the legislative conference on Tuesday.
Thank you. I had a question earlier.
there was the reference to signing on to the cystic fibrosis action letter about ACA key issues, and I can't find it online. So where would you make that link available?
I'm not sure whether we'll have the opportunity to right now because it's only going to be up for another half an hour, but you can all visit their website, which is located at, let me pull it up real quick. It's, if you visit cff.org, you'll be able to sign on at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's website.
Thank you.
Definitely. Well, thank you, everyone. You know, my information is listed here. If any of you have any questions, of course, this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted on the RDLA website. So you just go to the top right, click on the webinars tab, and you'll be able to find a recording. And finally, we'd like to let you know that our next webinar and conference call will be taking place next month on March 15th at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So I hope to hear from you all then, and have a great Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you.